So quick show of hands, who has seen SharePoint Swoop? All right, so that means a lot of people need to go hit the web, aka.ms/SharePoint Swoop, all one word. And if you look at my Twitter feed or Sue's Twitter feed from here or before, can't miss it. Fun show, 5 episodes. You'll learn a lot about what Funko did with their intranet and what you two can do as well. And also, I think we've got Jose in the house. Jose, stand up if you're here from Funko or coming. Hopefully Jose is here. We also are going to be talking about another customer who you might have heard if you've been to Jeff Tieper's session or if you were just at Dan Holmes' session. But we're also going to be referencing what Wavemaker did with their partner Add-in365 for their Work Hub intranet. So real quick, David and Susie. David is here till 12, and then he's going to hustle off to the airport, and Susie will be here, and they've been kind enough to support the session. So if you got any questions, you can bombard David until 12, or follow him out to the airport taxi, or Susie, you can grab her. She'll be here after the session as well. So Sue had a kind of quick question about a session just before us.
How many people went to the session that Dan Holm and Andy Hand did?
Not as many.
Not as
okay.
many as we
So
hope.
that session before, just to give you a sense, demoed the heck out of what you can do with SharePoint and Office 365 and lots of other moving pieces. All the new stuff, but really the value of, you can do this in an hour. They accomplished building a portal on stage. And they did everything from navigation, creating search, organizing their pages, all the stuff that you're going to hear that is best practice and whatnot. But anyway, great session. Review it offline at some point in time. It's a really worthy one. Or certainly, if you really want all the announcements, Jeff Tieper session from Monday at 4 p.m. Before we kick it off and tell you a little bit about what we're talking about, you might have heard that we're giving away some things, and we'll be doing it throughout the session. In the first giveaway, there's a pair of SharePoint socks right here. And I'm going to turn my back, and if they were to disappear, that's our first giveaway. Okay, that didn't take very long. So Sue, you're welcome. You're welcome. So there'll definitely be some more socks, a nice Funko Pop that Funko donated that we can give away from the new movie Venom, if you're a Venom fan. And there's a secret sticker on one of these screens that at some point will encourage maybe somebody to go pull off. But with that, what are we talking about?
Hey, well, I'm Sue Hanley, and I'm an information architect and a business analyst and infrequent star of reality web television. And I work with organizations to design intranets. This is basically what I do all day, every day.
I'm Mark Cashman, and I carry Sue's luggage wherever she goes. And I make sure she has fresh coffee and chocolates on the pillow. But no, I'm on the SharePoint team. I'm on the marketing side. I've been with SharePoint for a while, primarily focused with what we do in the cloud, and have owned for a little while what we're doing with the intranet specifically, and definitely now talking about how the intranet also plays into what we call the inner loop, so you can bring your outer loop, pages, news, all that into working as a team and collaborating. And we'll be talking about that in the context of both collaboration and communication.
So between the two of us, we have seen a lot of intranets. And this is how most employees feel about their intranet.
We'll have some snoring music.
Or maybe they feel like this. They're not so happy. So I have had the opportunity for the last 5 years to judge what I'll call an intranet beauty pageant. And I have seen a lot of what modern intranets look like, or what organizations are really, really proud of. And what the single most important characteristic of the winners are, interestingly enough, it's not that they look good, but they do, or that their users are super, super happy, but they usually are. It's because really great modern intranets help people get work done. And they help promote employee engagement. You've probably heard that word once or twice at this conference so far. Because both productivity and engagement can be measured, which means that we can get proof of the value of our modern intranets. And ultimately, that's really what we're trying to do when it comes to the modern intranet, because it can be kind of terrifying when you get asked to create a new intranet. You're trying to think of, like, where am I supposed to start? What should I be doing? How can I avoid having an intranet where people come and go to sleep, or we end up with a lot of crying users? And more importantly, we all wonder, how can I bring the kind of value to my organization that gets me budget, not for just phase 1, but for phase 2 as well.
Could we get a quick show of hands? Anybody that's an intranet manager or involved with building the intranet? So keep your hands up. We're going to do a series of 3 things. Who's just getting started on the journey? Who's midpoint? Who's been doing it for a long time? All right. So hopefully you'll see there's a lot of journey and a lot of phases and a lot of best practices all throughout, not just getting started, but how to manage and maintain over time as well.
So as most of you know, since a lot of you are responsible for your intranet, that your journey to a modern intranet should start with some planning. So for those of you who did see the presentation that Dan did right before ours, you saw them build a really amazing front door site in about an hour. The planning to get there, I promise you, took a lot longer than an hour. So your journey really should start with planning. And I really believe that the key to success with any intranet, modern or otherwise, has to be with understanding the key organizational goals. I call them the big rocks for the organization, not features that people want, not the R word requirements, but outcomes. I mean, I really have banned the R word from my vocabulary. I really want my clients to describe for me what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve, and then let's derive the requirements based on that outcome. So sure, we want the intranet to look good, but unlike a movie, no one is coming back to your intranet because it's entertaining and beautiful. They come back because it's useful.
So part of that planning is not a planning committee of one. And oftentimes, for a good part of the intranet that's going to be used by a lot of people across the company, it's not going to be everybody goes and does their own thing. It's going to be a mix of that, depending on whether it's team sites, collaboration, communication sites. And we feel pretty strongly about some of these mantras that if you build it, being the intranet manager or IT, and then you expect them to just flood the gates in, they might come. They might like it, or you might get the snooze fest or the hair pulling. If they build it, that's great. They have what they need. They're quicker time to market. They feel like they can get accomplished. But they might get lost. They may not know how to do X or Y settings. They might not know of X features that they don't have to go build custom because they use them right out of the box. But the value of everybody doing good planning, in which you'll see a lot of the things that we'll drill into, is people who own from an IT perspective, people who own from a communications perspective, but actually then talking to users and involving them. If you build it together, then you will succeed together, and actually it will get used, which is a big metric I think a lot of people are thinking, switching from product to service mindset. I know we do in terms of how we track the service, to really know that people are using it, to understand how they're using it, and to change when things aren't being used the way either you designed it or the business has changed and you need to change with the business.
Can I make a hint? If anyone's going to submit for an intranet award, don't say that you have 100% adoption because you forced the browser to open to the intranet homepage. Just saying.
So this is really a list of, if you hire Sue or somebody like Sue and her planning guidance and expertise, these are the types of questions that you'll get. And the value really is, don't just ask about the intranet. And I'll make one note to Susie from Add-in 365. She doesn't like the word intranet. She thinks of these types of experiences not only to be the way that they built them for WaveMaker, because there's a lot of flexibility to do them in a lot of ways depending on what your outcomes are, not your requirements. But it's about the work. It's about getting people to be effective in what they're doing, and it should help them be more effective. And I think her term is convert your intranet into a workhorse. And so design these things to work for you. So you want to ask people questions. This is part of involving people. You want to ask people, what do they do? What are you trying to achieve? What are the scenarios that you're trying to support? What are you working towards? I think maybe one question that's not on here is, when do you need it by? You know, you don't need to just, because you can create things quickly. If you know you've got a couple of weeks, do a lot more investment in talking to people and asking them, what do they do? What's their organization to do? What do they want their empower their users to do? And some of the answers to these questions will then dictate, oh, you need X or you need Y, which will drive into what you then ultimately build without starting just building it.
It also, I think, drives your priorities. Understanding what the big organizational rocks are is going to tell you. Like, no one wants to be number 11 on the top 10 things we're going to do this year. And I think the idea is you want to be part of the main event, which means understanding what's important to the organization. And that means asking people how they're measured, where they get the information they need to do their job. Because if all we're going to do is present news, not winning any awards.
So I'll have one thing I want to put Sue a little bit on the stand here. So this is, what, 10 questions? You've got a set of questions that you make publicly available on your website. How many questions are actually the most effective way when you first sit down in a couple of days or a couple of weeks to do the planning? How many questions?
Well, usually it's one, so tell me a little bit about what you do.
But you've got a checklist that you go through.
Well, honestly, these are many of the questions I use in what I'll call sort of my pre-intranet interview. I usually tell people that I don't want to talk to 17,000 people who have different roles. I want to really talk to people who either have a similar role or they represent a similar voice, like a major stakeholder of the intranet. And I really want to understand what is the kind of information people need to do their jobs, where do they get it today, where is it stored today, who needs access to it after they create it. So it really is these kind of questions. The other questions you're talking about are really related to governance. But here's the thing, I'm a business analyst, and here's one thing that all business analysts do, is we ask a lot of questions. And I think the idea is to ask questions so that we're not doing the talking, so that we can understand from our users what is it that's important to them.
So as you shift from asking a lot of questions, the next best thing to do is to actually look over the shoulder of what people are doing, to actually see what are they trying to accomplish and in what ways are they trying to accomplish it. So observe your users in their native setting. Make sure you're looking at it how they do it at their desk, when they're on the go, in meeting rooms. There's so many ways that people will leverage the intranet to get value. It might be as simple as pull up a PowerPoint because I want to do a presentation internally. Or it might be, I've got a sales proposal, I need somebody to make a change while I'm on the go, send them a quick note and make sure that happens. Or I'm publishing news like we talk about here at the show that's just sort of that quick news. We take a picture of the audience, send it away and say, we're having a great time at Ignite, wish you could be here next year. But the little thing you should notice on this with a click is this is like being a journalistic fly on the wall. Take notes. Really, really ask a ton of questions while you're observing, and then just watch. You'll see people do interesting things if you don't ask them questions, and just maybe prompt them to do one thing and then be quiet for a little while, and you'll learn a lot.
Well, people will always tell you more than they'll write down, and they will show you more than they tell you. And I had a situation with a client one time where we had done a phone interview, and everything's fine, everything's fine. We don't have any problem with the portal at all. And then we went out and observed, and we watched all the users struggle because the tools they needed every day were buried behind navigational links and way down on the page, and all the most important things that they needed were super hard to find. And they just looked at that as, oh, well, this is okay. And yet they couldn't find them every day. That, no one ever said, for that, everything's fine. And then you go out and observe, and you're like, oh, my God, we can do so much better.
So this is where we want to give away another pair of socks, because as people reflect, they oftentimes take pictures of themselves in a selfies. And maybe at some point, somebody would be willing to put these socks on, and by the end of the session, tweet it out, or maybe not here, taking your shoes off. But so if anybody is so brave, I don't want to err on one side or the other, just come and meet me as I'm moving over here, and I'll move towards you. If somebody's willing to play along and do a little selfie, or whether they're on your feet or not. I saw them moving.
Yeah, I got it.
All right. So thanks for playing along. And we will sit here as good consultants, and we will observe you with your socks. So let's take 5 seconds and watch this happen. No, I'm just kidding. So once you move beyond that, some of the questions I get on my end is, does the cloud support X or Y feature? If we want to move our intranet to the cloud, can it do this? Can it do that? And before we get into a feature drill down, which is really not the point of this session, a lot of things are just, what does a modern intranet, what is it supposed to do? What is it supposed to support? And this comes from a lot of guidance that comes from Sue and other folks that are just going to basically go through the checklist. What does it need to accomplish? It has to have good navigation. It has to have good search. You know what people are going to be doing at the barriers of when they're on the go. Is your intranet something you can put in your pocket and take with you and have a great experience no matter what device they have? As you start to consume and create all these different access points, you want to make sure that people aren't blocked by the device that they have, the bandwidth that they're available at, where they're located geographically. There's a lot of things that you don't want to get and have it be a barrier. And then the last thing that I think gets back to that comment around you don't want an intranet, you want something that's a workhorse, is it should be highly personalized. We do a lot against what we call the Microsoft Graph, but at the broader level to understand that it's what we do with AI, the intelligence of actually observing, not in a creepy way, not in this observation way now that I can see he's taking the picture. Hashtag BRK1089. But actually machine learning on the back end that's looking at and saying, who does Sue meet with? Who does she email? What documents is she sharing? What's public? What's private? Adhering to all those permissions, but getting the value of all that surplus of information about who is Sue and what can I show her that's most relevant to her. And I guarantee you, especially if you saw Dan's session, when Sue logs into an intranet or this landing pages that you design in this modern way, she'll have a different experience than I will. And that's a positive thing by nature of the relevancy of who does she work with, what does she work on, and what do they work on. And that defines what you see. And it trims the information. What news will she see? What documents will she see? What sites are going to be promoted to her? So there's a lot that we do across search and across the experiences of the pages that are built in that way. And again, not going through every point here, but it really defines what a modern intranet should be. And of course, it's more what do people expect? And it's to answer the question, yes, you can do that in the cloud.
I think search is a really important part of the experience because I've talked to a lot of people about their intranets, and there's two words that people always use when I ask about the intranet. What do you think they are related to search?
If you're shy, we can put some socks behind it.
Wrong results.
Wrong results?
Why doesn't it work like Google?
Why doesn't it work like, I don't know what the company you just named. He said, why doesn't it work like Google?
Right.
We answer that when you go to Google, you would search what are the best matches, but when you go to SharePoint, you want to find that one particular document. So
Yeah, so he said when you go to Google, you can't find what you're looking for. When you go to SharePoint, when you go to SharePoint, you find the exact document you've been looking for. I paraphrased, but that's about what he said.
I mean, what people always tell me, it's actually three words. Search doesn't work. I mean, the biggest complaint people have about their intranet is search. And the reason I think the reason that people feel it doesn't work is either they don't find what they want, the exact thing that they want, or they find too much, and that's because we don't have very good governance policies. So the content checks in, but it never checks out.
And typically we find that at conferences like this, because this is the time when we get a lot of face-to-face, the first question that I got asked when I was manning the booth was, tell me about your governance plan for Microsoft Teams. And then the second question is, does that also apply to the SharePoint site that's a part of that experience? And the answer is, yeah, we've got a great governance story, but it takes good planning to know what it is you're trying to accomplish and what your outcomes are to then build against that. Once you know what you're wanting to do, the technology is there to support you, but you don't just start by throwing sites and whatnot out there without a plan of who needs them, what are they going to do with them, and who needs to access them. So one other point that we like to be real clear of is we're not going to just give you a bunch of features and tell you that SharePoint News is awesome. Just go use it. You should have a reason for why certain teams might want to communicate in this new way. It's not going to be every team that's going to adopt every single feature. But we really drill down into what are the scenarios that really gets right back to where we started. Ask those questions. What are you trying to do? Not, are you trying to use OneDrive? Are you trying to use Microsoft Teams? Or did you see the new blur feature of Microsoft Teams? That's pretty awesome. Will you ever need it or use it? It's not going to be for everybody. Not everything's for everybody. So some of the ways we like to think of it in terms of scenarios across the products that then support them would be if one of these scenarios fits your landscape of what you need, oh, then okay, then let's talk about how you can accomplish that with technology X or Y. And I know that you might have some.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, I think you really need to talk about the scenarios, not what Microsoft. I haven't heard the W word, workloads, at all. And I think that was really doing the whole suite of tools a disservice to talk about like workloads, because it was very product related. And in fact, you need a lot of the tools in order to deliver the scenarios that I need to do my job. So rather than talking about you use this for that, talk about the thing that I want to do and show me how I accomplish my goal.
So I thought it was fairly clever when BPOS became Office 365 a number of years ago. I thought I was clever in my first customer meeting when we had the new Waffle, the new app launcher in the upper left. And I thought when they asked the question, because they were confused, what is Office 365? Is it the desktop clients? Is it the service, SharePoint Exchange, blah, blah, blah? And I said, I'll show you what Office 365 is. I went right into the app launcher, and I went, blah, and there's all the apps and everything. And of course, the first comment was, can we turn some of those off? Can we make them not visible? And so what is now more effective, not to say that I'm always in a sales mode, but sometimes what's the most effective is to say, what are you trying to do? A lot of times I'll get pulled in to talk about how you can do your intranet, how people can collaborate using Teams, and maybe to do some demos. But it is not, let me show you everything that's in this product. Let me show you the 300 features that we've shipped in the last couple of years. It's to just talk about some common things that people do, or if they have a specific thing they want to see, build the presentation around that and show them a few things. But a lot of questions, not the app launcher, even though I still like opening it because now it's got the graph built in. So what are our customers saying? We have a quote, and we can read it verbatim because I think it's a good one. The more we facilitate our employees to get information faster, to be more productive, the more that they can do to push therapies towards our patients. So certainly this is one of our customers, Shire. They're in the pharma business, and they have lots of great information. If you want to go find out about their intranet, we had a nice webinar with Sue and the team from Shire and a couple other MVPs. And there's a lot of information about what they did, so you can learn about that. But specifically, that value didn't say, does the page load faster? Does the SharePoint service, have X or Y? They're actually working with patients, trying to get the therapies out there faster. So they actually have their workflow all the way through that's much more proficient because they just modernized how they did it. And then the technology, fortunately, was able to support that.
So how we did that and how I think about the world is to really start with governance. I mean, the real outcome, before you do anything when you're thinking about your intranet, you really want to think about how are we going to deliver those services to solve business problems? And in order to do that, that means you need to think about governance. It shouldn't really be an afterthought, especially for Office 365, but you can't really plan governance without understanding business needs, because really governance is about managing risk and figuring out how much risk are we willing to assume, or how are we going to deal with that risk. So one thing you can do, governance first for intranets, often means thinking about who can create a site. How many people have struggled or are struggling with that issue? I mean, it's a big deal making that decision.
Actually, I have another quick question. Whether you're an intranet manager or not, who in their environment, if you're using this new technology, actually can create a site? Who can create a site? And leave your hands up if you have created a site. Awesome. Power to the people.
Right. But many organizations want to lock things down for all kinds of reasons and not allow anyone to. Yeah, that's the Microsoft answer. But that doesn't always work in how many people lock things down in your organization?
I mean, yay!
Yay. Yeah. Thank you very much. But what happens when you lock things down? People are going to find a way
A ticket to IT.
to get things done. And that could mean that they go around your policies. And they may start using some consumer-grade tool that doesn't follow your governance policies to share their content. Now, that doesn't mean that you should open everything up, but I will tell you one of the things you can think about is that we have a lot of great tools in the admin center to help us understand what got created, what are people doing. So there may be some opportunities to think about what happens if we allow people to provision a site. So I think a modern intranet, you need to think about governance first before it's too late, and before you even think about information architecture. So I'm an information architect, but I spend a lot of time focused on governance. I think you cannot do one without the other. I think they really go together, and that really good governance balances risk with outcomes. And the governance decisions you make should align with the outcomes you're trying to achieve and the business environment in which you operate. Because sometimes you can't necessarily open everything up depending on where you are working. So, I mean, you want to make some decisions about sharing internally or externally, provisioning, managing risk. And oftentimes, I have worked with so many clients on this issue, and they often say, look, if we just knew what questions to ask, we'd be able to think about governance. And so I actually have thought about this a lot, and I do this all the time. And so these are 2 resources I think will help you get started. On the left, these are the questions I use in my consulting practice, and I used to have 2 versions, one that I shared, one that I didn't. Now, this is exactly what I use in my consulting engagements. It's got 3 columns: the question, a place to record the answer, and then a place to indicate where does that answer get reflected in the governance and adoption center that I want you to build in a modern communications site. Because one thing I've learned is that when I first started doing this, everyone asked, well, we need a governance plan, and how would that manifest? In a doorstop, a document that no one ever read. That's kind of like the tree falls in the forest thing. If you produce a governance document and no one reads it, that means you don't have any governance.
In fact, the governance document is the tree that fell that nobody heard.
Right, and so I really have been struggling with this, how do we get the governance plan not written down, but followed, because that's really where it really, really matters. And so you manifest the governance plan, I think, in a training and adoption center that you can build in a modern communications site, and you build in governance into your site designs. I mean, I will define governance for you. I got this from a client, so I didn't make it up, in 3 words. No sharp edges. And I think the idea is to make sure that your information doesn't get hurt, that it doesn't leak and cause problems, and that you don't cause any pain for the people who are creating content, that you make it as easy as possible for them to create content and tell their great stories by not allowing them to make a mistake like accidentally deleting the document library or things like that.
So these are great free resources. They are free from a cost. They are worth the investment of time. And I think if you look at SharePoint Swoop as an example, this is exactly what episode 1 was about. It was have a good planning and strategy meeting. Granted, it was truncated because they were just there for 3 days. But the beautiful thing about it is it dictated exactly what they were going to do for those 3 days and for the next coming months. And it's worth knowing, what do we want to accomplish? Ask the right questions, talk to the right people, and then get started. And these are great resources that a lot of people have had a lot of great feedback on.
They're the most downloaded things on my website. So we've thought about governance. We've figured out what all of these capabilities mean to us. You know, any good intranet is about telling a compelling and comprehensive story. And that really means understanding your business goals, the resources that you have from the suite, whether it's on-prem or Office 365, and planning how you're going to put together the building blocks in Office 365 to tell that story. And fundamentally, no matter what there's all kinds of wonderful things that SharePoint does, but at the end of the day, there's sites, there's lists, and there's libraries. But when it comes to internet planning, there's mostly sites. And back in the day, we used to plan our intranet in a site hierarchy. Raise your hand if you can relate to this architecture.
Who has used Visio to create a diagram just like that?
PowerPoint, back of a napkin. I mean, there's a lot of tools that you can use. These are 2 different classic approaches to intranet designs. You may even be using one of them right now. What do they have in common? Subsites.
Ooh.
And a relatively small number of site collections. So I will own it. I have designed intranets this way, not too long ago, unfortunately. And one of the real benefits that we get from designing in this hierarchical fashion is that we get global navigation by inheriting from subsites. And this allowed us to create this navigational experience, a navigational table of contents, if you will, for our intranet. But at the same time, this is 99 problems, and the subsites are all of them. Governance is basically scoped to the site collection level, and of course, what happens in every organization, more predictable than anything else? Change. And every time you move things around, your links break. Very difficult to sustain the subsite model. And yeah.
I was just going to say, this is one of those things from the SharePoint team. This is the legacy slap on the wrist. We shouldn't maybe have architected it this way, but there's a lot of value in the way it was in the past, and there are ways to move forward. And I would tell you the second most common question I got when I was at the booth was, so I've got a bunch of subsites. What should I do? Should I keep creating subsites, or should I be using hub sites? And what I think you'll get in a sense in the next slide is our guidance. You can't dictate that don't use subsites ever again. They are allowed. They are available. They actually have been modernized if you go create them. But the value that you get when you unlock and place into something that it's its own boundary, its own zone, its own permissions, and all that stuff that you just saw in that last slide makes it so that you can have a world that is
flat. And so the modern site architecture is going to be crowded with site collections. That's actually okay. Don't worry about it. No kittens are going to die. It will be totally fine. And you have tools to manage the crowded world of lots of site collections in the admin center. And the nice thing about having each unit of work get its own place to work is that we can decommission things when they're no longer relevant to our business. We can govern each site collection independently, which allows our search experience to be less crowded with results and more apt to return something much more relevant to us. So we have tools in the admin center to help us monitor what's going on in our flat, crowded world. And then we also have my favorite feature, which are hub sites, which allow you to create families of sites that belong together and share a common theme, share common navigation, and as Mark likes to say, hub.
hub before sub.
Right. Hub before you sub.
Unless you're that new data center that we're putting in the ocean, then it's okay to sub.
So hub sites allow you to get a lot of the benefits that you used to get with the dreaded sub-site. And I've learned since we started using hub sites that I've found that there are mostly 3 models for hub sites. You're either going to do them functionally. So for example, HR is a classic model where HR has a lot of different sort of types of things that HR does. So you're very likely to create an HR hub, and the benefits site might be a member of that family, compensation, even the private HR team site that no one gets to except for the people who work in HR. You might also align your world geographically. And at Shire, this is one of the things we're doing in our locations, various locations around the world. We're calling those local intranets inside fill in the blank name of country. And in talking to the business, we learned that finance in Austria aligns much more closely to the Austria Center of Work than they actually do to global finance, although they do take a lot of direction and content from global finance. And more importantly, they wanted their site to be in German. And so our decision for hubifying, I'm not sure if that's a real term,
Sure.
Was to do a geographic-based hub where Austria Finance aligns to the Austria hub, but has a link back to global finance, because people who work in Austria actually care about the Austria view of finance world rather than the global view of finance world, which is really most important to the people who work in finance.
And before you hubify, you groupify, teamify, hubify.
There you go. And then the last model, I call this a portfolio model, where you may want to collect a whole bunch of project sites into a program. And that program portfolio might be a communication site that publishes out assets for all the teams that are connected to the hub, or it might be a super team as well. So either one.
So quickly on this, who here has run the PowerShell command to make a communication site or a team site a hub site? Who here is looking forward to clicking a button to create a hub site? All right. So that's coming to the SharePoint Online Admin Center. The other thing to note here is there is a great planning guide, and we had a great ghostwriter, a phenomenal asset that came and wrote some documentation with us. So the planning guide that you see out there has a lot of what you're hearing today behind it. And then through our support team, obviously, we added our own elements to it. But it's a great planning guide. And now we actually have some new assets that are going to be in conjunction to that to help you, guide you, and give you some documentation to follow. And we'll have a link at the end that includes the hub planning that Sue helped with. And then you also wrote another article recently.
Right, actually, I can. Well, anyways, I only wrote it, by the way, if you like it. If you didn't like it.
You can blame Microsoft.
Right.
So we know navigation is important. One of the biggest features that we heard lots of claps in Jeff's session when Dan showed it, additional claps, is just us coming into the modern world with mega menus. So mega menus certainly will help a lot, but you still need to think about what you're going to put in them. Navigation is important. Organizing what's in the navigation is important. If you're the one that plans it, that's great. If you're the first person to show up as a user to consume it and navigate with it, you want to understand, obviously, what do you do there. So we want that to be something that's very distinct to what the company needs so that people can help find their way, because we know at the end of the day, it's all about the user getting their stuff done, being effective, being productive. And because it's all about them, and we know that a lot of what the experience is that you want to build, that we talked about a little bit earlier when we talk about intelligence, is to make it all about them. It's okay to cater to people if what you're really trying to have as an outcome is for them to not get lost, not to get confused, not have trouble finding the right person, the right document. There's one of the things that they actually, at Microsoft, value for us is how much do you leverage the work of other people. That doesn't mean that I just steal somebody's deck and present it as is. That means I found a really great slide that somebody put together, and I copy-pasted it into mine, and it wasn't hard for me to find it. It wasn't hard for me to find the person if I had a question about it, and then it was really easy to put into my own presentation and then be the hero the next time based on the work that other people did. So there's a lot of value in what we can do to promote to an individual, and to have that be different and a different experience across the whole company is obviously something you can build in and plan so that people can have a unique experience.
Hey, Mark, can I just add one thing about navigation? I mean, we talked about how great search is, but I've done a lot of longitudinal usability studies over multiple years in the same organization. And what I've noticed over the years is about 80 to 90% of your users are coming to your intranet with an expectation that they can browse for what they want. And so you can't, as wonderful as search is, because we have this long history of not delivering, and it's not a search problem, it's often a governance problem. We have this long history of not delivering on search expectations because we're getting these questions about, why can't it work like the G word? Because of that, your users have an expectation that they can browse for what they want. So planning navigation for your intranet and for every single site is really, really important.
So the thing that we think then makes it a much more individualized experience is then what can then people do with the intranet, not just what can the intranet do for them. So we think of the intranet as a place where people can share news. And creating a news article is really easy, to pull in services, to tell the story that you want to tell, big or small. We want people to be able to share their vision. That might be a distinct type of site where it's more of like an executive corner type scenario. But people to be able to share once they're done planning and strategizing for the business, this is where they can go and share out their thinking. And then, of course, have it be engaging so that they can get back that information that maybe they didn't get right, or the things that really were good and that they want to continue. And that all becomes then a corpus of knowledge, as people to start to get more open in sharing, or at least open enough for the groups that they work with, that they'll be able to then have that information easy to find, easy to share, easy to provide feedback on, ask questions about, and have that be something that's not always a locked box. You don't want your intranet to ever feel like a locked box that's hard to get information into or out of. And some of that depends on services that we offer, services that you build yourselves or that you get from third parties, or are already in services that have nothing to do with Microsoft, yet they have a nice web API and you can pull them in. So don't forget that it's also a platform. So we're going to take a couple of moments here to share some examples, and we'll get into our next giveaway with our first that we actually started the session off with, which was Funko. And so I'll let Sue do a little talking here because she actually helped guide them to get the information from them of what do you want your site to do. And of course, this is the show that we talked about, and these are their real sites. And I'll, before handing off to Sue, the one thing I was most jealous about with Funko was that they don't use their profile picture as just a photograph. They actually pop themselves, if you know what that means. They create the figurines that they sell, and they're really nicely done, and it's a real treat to navigate their intranet because it's so inviting to engage with somebody kind of through their personality of what their pop is. They get to design it, and then that's their profile picture. Literally, you go into the Active Directory, and that's what you see.
Which has benefits in that. I actually had a conversation with about this. I'm not a big fan of that, actually, because the idea of using the internet to engage and meet one another is to recognize a person from their picture. I've been talking to you, I see your photograph, and one of the conversations we did have, and that they are thinking about, is when you allow people to use that cartoon picture of themselves, are you using your intranet? And again, this is all over every method that you use to collaborate and connect. Are you actually using it to build engagement with your colleagues? And while as cute as that is, and I think it's adorable, what's really important about this slide, by the way, is that this is the simplest end of personalization. What they did that is so clever is, in a company of artists, this is super easy to do.
They have a whole floor dedicated to designers. That's just the primary objective of what they do. Best thing about knowing that is they don't know what SharePoint is.
Right.
They are not coding anything. They just draw beautiful images.
Right, but see, what's important about this is look how color aligned the pictures are. The images not only relate to the content that they're pointing to, but in the green one in particular, those are various pops designed to tell a story, an image that actually relates to the content that is helping you as a user get to the content that you need. And they did something very simple, which is to personalize that experience by using Funko characters to essentially guide people through navigation.
Yep, so when you see at our end, you'll see that both Sue and I popped ourselves. And you can too. We've got a fun URL where the Funko team has the ability for you to go create your own pop and save that as an image. So switch to a very different company, the one that I work for. This is Microsoft. Our main company portal that we have, we call MSW for Microsoft Web. And the value here that we're trying to highlight is that the team has built it so it's a personalized experience. And you kind of have to squint a little bit just to see what some of that personalized experience is. But essentially what you're seeing here is it's based on location, or it's based on individual. And you see a different set of content. This is the same home page at the same point in time, logged in as two different people. So left and right are separate individuals. Just to move a little bit faster by nature of time, one thing that we wanted to showcase here was a personalized portal. And I think this is where you've got some maybe insights into some, you've got some feedback on announcements we've recently made to make this a little easier.
I love these Me web parts that allow you to target content personally. And I think my favorite web part, actually, it's such a little minor thing, but one of the things I loved about news was being able to roll up news on any site from any other site in the tenant. Well, the thing every single one of my clients ask for is the ability to do the same thing for events. And that is happening as well.
So now you can roll up events, you can roll up news, you can roll up site activity, and the more you plan for it, in addition to having the ability to target your audience with what's being rolled up, super powerful. You got to kind of know what the bells and whistles are when you get to the point of needing this, but it also makes a really nice, unique experience. So this is where we turn to our friends, and I think it looks like David had to run. But if you know the company Add-in365, they're one of our intranet partners. They worked with a company called Wavemaker. Susie waving her hand here. She works for Add-in365, and they worked together to come up with a very effective, very personalized experience that they call the Work Hub. And this is a graphic they were willing to share that's available actually through the case study that we can point you to that really showcases this is not about top-down news. This is not about big events that are coming. They do have space for that. But where they want people to log into as a first-run experience next to maybe email or Teams is this, which gives them an access to everything that's happening around that individual. And they do it in a nice performant way. It's modern. It's using a lot of our out-of-box web parts or customs ones they built with the SharePoint framework. But it also, and you can talk to Susie about this, they didn't just light this up on day one. They actually talked to the customer. And he talked to his clients and customers throughout the business to find out what they want, what they need. What are they doing? What are they not doing? That's a really important one. What not to put on this page is probably one of the most important questions. So definitely grab time with Susie if you want to find out what adding can add and certainly give you some feedback on what decisions Wavemaker made. So take us home.
So, there's a lot of great things that Microsoft gives you, but I think the important thing is that you guys are totally okay with if it doesn't come in the box, you may need to go find some friends and get it from another source.
Yep. So I forgot to give a couple of gifts away, but on the Funko slide, we want to go back to Funko, has anybody already gotten a ticket for Venom? Anybody already scheduled a ticket for Venom? I saw a hand over here. Are you interested in the pop? All right. So I tell you, don't look at the back, because I feel like of the trailers that I've seen, there's stuff on the back that actually might give things away. But that's just me. So thank you for coming, and thanks for supporting.
All right, just to kind of take us home really quickly, one of the things you need to think about, especially in the land of Office 365, is you want to make sure that you're planning for change, that you have people who are the village dedicated to watching the roadmap, seeing what's announced, so that you can make sure that the right information is transferred to your audience at the right time. I can't speak highly enough to the value of having an intranet champions program. People besides yourselves who are spread out across the business, who are really dedicated to staying on top of what is going on, who are willing to sort of take the first leap into things, and are willing to sort of share that knowledge with their colleagues. So I've learned a lot by judging these intranet competitions. And these are some of the things that I've learned that these seem to be patterns in all of the organizations that tend to win awards. Number one, they make it super easy for people to do the right thing. In other words, they really try to eliminate the sharp edges. What's the one thing that gets cut from every IT project that just kills me? And that is training. And what I will notice in the Intranet award winners is that this does not get cut. That people are given an opportunity to learn, that they're given an opportunity to experience all the great new capabilities in a really engaging way, and they are given the opportunity to become part of a support community, all of which I think really helps your intranet become an award-winning intranet.
If you go back just for a second, I'd like to retitle this slide live here right now.
Okay.
These are not lessons from the award winners. These are the lessons that the award winners learned from Sue Hanley. Just clearing that up.
No cheating. All right, here's your call to action when you go back. And Mark had said that we would give you the link to all of the Microsoft guidance for building modern intranets. And there's some white papers there that a lot of MVPs in the field, not just me. I think I saw Eric Overfield. He wrote the branding one. Who else? And so I think you'll find a lot of really, really great guidance. And this is the kind of thing that we want you to think about when you go back to your office. And there is just one thing I really have to say about planning intranets, is that you are never done. And so you can't really say there's an end to the project. The project is going to go on.
Well, let's clarify that. Is there anybody here that's finished their intranet? Is there anybody here that wants to finish their intranet? Is there anybody who thinks that they can finish it better now, if they ever do finish? Hopefully so.
Great. Well, our slides are available. Here's my pop.
Don't go too quickly. That's
Right.
Sue as a pop.
Me as a pop. Mark
That's
as a
me
pop.
as a pop, and I've got a little cat. You can add lots of accessories, lots of fun stuff.
All right. And we'll just wrap up by saying thank you so much for joining us for these 45 minutes, and don't forget to evaluate this session.
Thank you.